Hello, colleagues. First of all, let me please express to you my profound thanks. I'm so grateful that you have agreed to take part in this experiment of creating flipped classes for our students. I understand that many of you may have little experience with this modality of teaching, and I appreciate that you're willing to take the risk. I can tell you that in my experience, the flipped classroom is definitely the way to go. It's so much more fun than conventional teaching. It's true, it involves a certain amount of upfront work that I'm going to describe to you in this video and in subsequent videos, but the rewards of having your students being really wrapped up in the material and engaged in it and working with you through some of the problems in areas that you yourself find fascinating, because otherwise why would you be teaching this stuff? That's really one of the most amazing benefits of flipped classrooms. So what I'd like to do right now is to talk to you a little bit about what exactly is a flipped classroom, how does it work, and what do you have to do to create one? So first of all, let us understand that the flipped classroom is basically a reversal of the traditional use of classroom meeting time. Like, what have we been doing as instructors for the last, 3 or 4 millennia? Right? Basically, we started out sitting around a campfire explaining things to the younger people about, what they need to know in life and things like that. And eventually we grew to having classrooms with PowerPoint and all kinds of stuff like that. But the economics of instruction always involved the restrictions of one-to-many communication. One instructor, many students. And given that constraint, the only way to really make efficient use of our time is to make sure that you use the time with students on the most basic elements of instruction, which was explaining the stuff you need to explain. All of the higher order thinking that goes on in true learning, you just had to basically trust that students would do it on their own. That's why we had classwork, which was based on listening to the instructor drone on, and then afterwards there was homework where the students would engage the material, do problems, hopefully think about material, or they might just check out and, the next day they'd say the dog ate their homework. But that's basically the economics of instruction that always went on, for millennia, really. Now, what the flipped classroom means is taking advantage of asynchronous learning materials like videos and putting the more humdrum but necessary elements of learning onto that platform, which means if you give a really great lecture and you think it's fantastic and students really got the material that you delivered, if you had recorded that, you could just give it to the students in advance and say, hey, watch this video on your own time. Typically, they'll watch it at double speed or 1.5 speed as well. I once had a student come to my office for the first time and say, wow, Dr. Abramson, it's so strange to hear you speaking so slowly. But, let them do that on their own, and then you flip the classroom by saying, when you come to my class, we're not going to go through that material that you should have learned on your own. We're going to actually now take it to a higher level of learning where you do the fun stuff, the debates, the experiments, the questions, the Socratic method. All that kind of stuff can happen in a flipped classroom far better than it can in a conventional classroom. Have a look, for example, at Bloom's taxonomy of learning here. And where I took this off the internet, they actually have divided high school level and college level. I think that's a useful thing, so I kept it, but it's not necessarily true for everything. If you look at the bottom levels of the taxonomy of learning, you can see that the most basic elements, the foundation, is learning to remember stuff, remember facts, formulae, remember stuff. And in order to do that, someone has to tell you the stuff to remember, and you got to think about it and pay attention. And then you have to understand it, because that's the next level up. You have to analyze the materials that are all connected. You have to see how they fit together, how they work together, and so on. That's basically stuff that can be done with a lecture, and that lecture can also be put into a video. The much harder parts are, okay, how do we apply this information in situation X, scenario Y, and things like that? How do we break it down? How do we see what parts are the most significant? How do we evaluate this thesis? Is it correct? Is it partially correct? And so on. And then finally, how do you create new information based on the synthesis of things that you've already mastered? It's really hard to do the 4 higher levels of learning together with a large group of students, and it's impossible if you haven't done the first 2 levels of learning. So the advantage of the flipped learning classroom, it's kind of like eating dessert first, right? You tell the students, go off and you do the basic stuff. You have the meat and potatoes on your own, and then come on in, and then we're going to talk about the really fun stuff. We're going to do the pastries. We're going to do the eclairs. We're going to do, wow, I haven't had lunch yet. But that's the whole idea of the flipped classroom. You offload the material that you're going to say the same way more or less every single year. You do it once in a video, you give it to them, and then when they come to your class, they're already primed for much higher level learning. That's why it's really so much fun. It is hugely advantageous for the students because they can make much more efficient use of their time. If they're commuting by public transit, they can watch your lecture on the subway, things like that. And then when they come to class, they're on a whole different level. Okay, what do you need to do in order to create a flipped classroom? So there's 3 basic elements. The first is you have to create those videos of your lectures. You already know how to lecture. You've done that so well for so many years. Now it's time to capture it. Now there are a lot of, really involved techniques, both technical aspects with lighting and sound and things like that. And there's even more material about how to really come across well on a 2-dimensional screen. And we'll get into those things in later videos, I hope. But the easiest way to create videos of your lectures is just Zoom yourself. Just open up a Zoom window, hit record, and then give your lecture. Yes, it's nice to edit it later. It's nice to make sure that the resolution on the video is high, and we'll talk about those technical things. But if you want to do it cheap and dirty, it's just a matter of opening up a Zoom window. We have a lot of equipment here on campus to help you with this. We have a green room. We have IT support for you. And I'm going to talk about this more in future videos, but the basic thing is, number 1, create videos of your lectures. Second thing you've got to do is you've got to post them on Canvas. And you've got to realize that Canvas is sort of like the extension of your classroom. You should make sure that the Canvas shell is well structured, that it's easy for students to access the videos, for them to understand what they need to do next. And I also suggest you embed in your Canvas website some low stakes incentives to make sure that students actually watch the videos, like a very short quiz, which you could put together with AI very quickly. Hey, here's 5 questions that based on that lecture that you just watched, and let them self-test and make sure they know it. And you can see the results and make sure that, yeah, they have in fact watched it. So that's the second thing you gotta do. The first is create the videos. The second is post them on Canvas in a clear and transparent manner. And then the third part, which is the really fun part, is now you create lesson plans for your class meetings. Just imagine in your mind having a group of well-prepared students who have already heard your lecture. And in fact, they may have reviewed it. They may have watched it more than once. They may have slowed down at points. Have those students come into your classroom, and now what do you do with them? That's when we get to the higher order teaching. That's really when a flipped classroom takes off. Okay, so what's next for us as faculty? I'm going to use this Canvas shell as a place for us to communicate. I'd like to post some useful resources here for you. Maybe we'll have some discussion boards or some FAQs, things like that. And I look forward to introducing more materials over the next few weeks. But I want to warn you right now that flipped classrooms are fantastic. They are really the way to go, but they require more upfront work the first time you teach a course. The second, third, and later times you teach it, you may find that a lot of your material transfers over very well, and you may want to use lectures that you created for the first flipped class and just simply copy them over into your next shell. But from time to time, you'll refresh them as you get more information and better technology and things like that. But the thing is, it requires a lot of upfront work, so it's a good idea to start now while we have some time before the next semester. And great, that's about it. I look forward to working with you on this project, and I hope you have tremendous success with our students. Thanks very much for watching.